Hello again, YouTube. You're probably thinking, oh god, he's making another video about mealworms. Maybe. Okay. There's some stuff that's changed a little bit about the mealworms. Besides having a lot more of them, maybe this time I'll just give a quick tutorial on how I got my setup. And it works for me, but it may not work for everybody else. And I know I've already did 3 or 4 other videos before this that kind of gives a little bit more detail, but this is more like everything in a nutshell kind of video, if you want to call it that. And I don't really know that much about mealworms other than how to raise them, and I guess you could call it a little bit of how-to kind of video if you want to. I'll start by explaining when you buy mealworms. You get them, they look like they're like this, just just regular mealworm kind of thing. And after a period of time, they'll get really big. These has gotten pretty good sized worms now, and after a little while, they'll turn into pupae. And then after a short time after that, maybe a week or 2, then they'll turn into little beetles like this. And I know thing about darkling beetles is that when they feel like they're being threatened and stuff, they'll actually turn over on their backs and play dead and things like that. I think if you're going to decide that you're going to raise mealworms and you do like what I did in the other videos, that's entirely up to you if you want to raise them like that, and I'll show you why in a minute. I got a bunch of them. This is just the main drawer. Of course, I've already showed this before, but I'm going to show a little bit more this time. I talked about I had other drawers that have worms in them, mealworms. Okay, this is drawer number 1. Okay. This ain't the worms, but this is the beetle drawer. And what I got going on down here is that I'm trying to get some of the beetles to come out of this drawer, because they've laid so many eggs in this drawer that now it kind of reminds me of some of the other videos I've seen. It's similar to this, but not exactly, where they don't separate their pupae, they don't separate their beetles or their worms. And that's what's going on here in this drawer. And it wasn't on purpose, but I just didn't have the time to really separate them. So I just kind of let them do their own thing, and they're thriving this way too. So I guess you could say I'm kind of doing an experiment on them to see how they're going to thrive, either being separated or together. And what they're fighting over right here is a piece of carrot. If I can find it. They've either hidden it or they've completely eat it up. Anyway, this is just basically, I didn't separate them in this drawer. I did try to take some of the beetles out, but they're pupating and they're multiplying too fast for me to keep up with them. So I just kind of keep an eye on them, and I still give them food and things like that. I still throw oatmeal in there, and I still give them carrots and things like that. And I'm trying to get some of the beetles out, and I'll show you why in just a minute on that part. And this is the other drawer. It's basically the same kind of setup. It's got mealworms and pupae and beetles all mixed together. And if you see, they're going after that carrot. And I do believe, yeah, there's some dead beetles in there, but I've been finding, even if you see some beetles, if you separate your pupae and your beetles and your worms, if you separate them, I still separate the pupae from the worms up here. And if you go over here, this is another drawer that I've made. This is a little bit different than what I had in the other videos. It looks the same up here. It's got beetles and pupae in it. But what's a little different is that on the bottom of this bin, I don't know if I can do it without hurting myself. On the bottom of this bin, it's got a screen on it that I put on the bottom of it. And I'm kind of taking a pointer from one of the other videos that I saw where they put a screen on the bottom of it, so that way when the beetles lay their eggs, the babies will fall through the screen. And I have another worm bin that I take all the pupae out of, which I'm gonna have to do that soon. You see, I got pupae again. Got more of them. This is worm drawer number 2, and you see it's just about as many, if not more, than the other drawer. There's quite a bit more. They're everywhere. So, but yeah, there's a whole lot more in this one than it is in the other drawer. Alright. Now, this is for worm drawer number 3. And again, quite a bit more worms. So you see, just like I said in the other video, I have a lot of worms, a lot of mealworms that just don't really know what to do with them. And they're thirsty a little bit. They're going after the carrot I put in there a couple hours ago. But there's a whole bunch of them in there. Alright, basically, if you're not going to have, if you raise them like the way I'm doing it, like the setup that I have, it would probably be ideal if you're going to sell a bunch of them to a pet store, or if you got friends that want to buy them off of you, or if you want to give them away, or if you have a lot of animals that eat them, then this would be a good setup. You know, similar to what I got, because then you have a lot more than you can, a lot more worms and, you know, to feed everything. But in my situation, I only got one reptile. Well, I got 2, but only one of them wants to eat the worms. So, and this is also the other bin. That's just a normal, regular size bin. It doesn't have as many worms in it because it originally was a nursery at one point, but it's not no more. And once all these worms are used up in here, I'll clean this bin out and probably put something else in it, or you know, take some of the other worms and put them in this one. I'm not sure just quite yet. Alright, set this up here. Now, you think it's a lot of pupae? I think so. And by the way, this is how many pupae I get in about every 5 days. I just emptied this bin about 4 days ago, and after picking through all the bins with all the worms in it, this is how many pupae I've gotten out in about 5 days. That's a lot. But anyway, this is the bedding that I was talking about. It's actually for mealworms. The other stuff works just as good as this stuff does. It also comes from joshsfrogs.com. And this is, you know, great value, quick oats. and this is also what I use for the mealworm. So if you're wanting to start a colony of your own, that you want to raise your own mealworms, I'd say if I would have known this when I started, I probably would have went that direction. But my suggestion is that if you're only going to do, like a really small colony, I would probably not separate the pupae from the worms and the beetles and leave them all together in the same bin. I've also found out too that, being that Rango likes all kinds of different insects, he'll eat the pupae, the worms, and the beetles. So he gets a variety of different things, and being that I have this many, it's not going to hurt the population at all. But if you are planning on, say you want to give a bunch of them away, or you're going to sell some of them or do whatever, if you got a lot of them and you got a lot of animals, then if you want them to grow, I also found out too that if depending on the temperature will also depend on how fast they grow, or also how fast you'll have a big population. Say if you keep it between 75 and 85 degrees and you have a certain room in your house that you want to start raising mealworms and do your own colony, then they will actually pupae, you'll have a bunch of worms in there start pupating very quickly. And if you feed them stuff like oatmeal and carrots like I got here, and also the mealworm bedding, you'll have a whole bunch of mealworms pupating before you know it, and after about a week or two of pupating, you'll have a bunch of beetles. And if you separate them like I was doing, where you have like another bin, in my case I got 3 of them that have nothing but beetles in them, and once your pupae have started hatching, you want to separate your pupae from your beetles so your beetles don't eat the pupae. I've also found out something different too, that I don't know why they're doing it, but I've noticed here lately that recently fairly, that when I go through digging through through here to find pupae like this, when I start digging through here, I'll find a few dead ones in here too, and every now and then I'll find a mealworm latched onto it where it's eating the pupae. So the first 24 hours, or should I say the first I want to say the first 12 to 24 hours after a worm is pupated, if you don't take it out of the worm bin, the worms will turn on it and they will eat it. And you see right there what he's doing. He's trying to get him. He was trying to get him a test bite. Now they start doing that, and they'll start swarming up on it and they'll start eating it. Of course, when you have a lot of them, you don't really worry about it. Now if you're just starting off with a small colony of, say you start off with about 300 or 400 worms, and you lay down about a ½ inch layer of bedding, of this mealworm bedding, or if you don't want to use mealworm bedding, that's okay too. You can use oatmeal. It works just as well. I didn't use any mealworm bedding for at least 3 or 4 months, and I was just using that stuff. So if you want to start a small colony, I would recommend getting a small bin, sort of about this size, like this. If you're going to do a small colony for maybe 1 or 2 reptiles, I'd recommend this. Put about a inch layer of oatmeal, quick oats. You can use bedding if you want to, that's up to you. You put about 300 mealworms in here. Keep your temperature around 75 to 80 degrees, and your worms will start growing very quickly. And all you do is you can either put baby carrots and romaine lettuce, or you can put just full-size carrots in there with a leaf or 2 of romaine, and you'll have a big colony of mealworms before you know it. Now, if you want to control the size of your colony and you don't have a lot of reptiles or anything like that, then I would suggest that you don't separate your pupae and your beetles and your worms. You keep them together in one bin, and it'll look like a big mess, which you've seen over here. It looks like a big mess of nothing but insects running all over the place. It looks like this. That's what's in here, is pupae, beetles, and mealworms, all in one bin. And they seem to be thriving. And what this little thing is here is, I was trying to see if I could try to catch most of the beetles and separate them without having to go after them. And it's not working too well. But I was going to put them over here, put the beetles in this drawer, you know, start them off in here. I got some of them, and I put some of them in that drawer. And I got a small number in there, started in there, so they could start doing that, so I can see how well this drawer works out. So far, so good. But they haven't done anything about eggs yet. Now, if you don't separate your pupae from your beetles and your mealworms, and they'll start eating the pupae, but it'll help control the numbers if you don't want the colony to get too big. They should be okay, but you know, that's if you just want to make a small colony. If you want to make a really large colony, then you need to separate the pupae from the worms as soon as you see them. And then once your pupae start turning into beetles, which so far these haven't yet. Well, I might have spoke too soon. There's one right there. I gotta get him out in a minute. But once you start seeing beetles hatching, then you want to separate them so they don't turn on the pupae. And that's pretty much it. If you want a really large colony, make sure you separate them all. If you want a small colony, then keep them together. But other than that, I don't know if there's anything else to say that I haven't already said in all the other videos. But as you can see, any kind of combination of way that I want to raise them, it all seems to work no matter what. And I try, so they seem to adapt to it. But you know, you can see it's not that bad. They all seem to get along to a point. I mean, they will, you know, they will eat each other if you don't watch it. But if you want to control their numbers, and that's what I'm trying to do right now, is control them a little bit. I'm just letting them stay together in these 2 drawers. It's just an experiment to see how well this works. And again, I may end up changing it again pretty soon, so I don't know yet. But other than that, it's kind of, you can tell that they really love carrots a lot. So the worms and the beetles and everything, they go after this stuff pretty quick. And that was a full carrot about 2 hours ago. Well, they just go to town on it. But I guess that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to add anything that I may have forgotten, or if you want to comment and rate my video, that's okay too. If you want to, just tell me how I'm doing, what you think. Of course, I may end up changing something in about a month from now. Who knows? I don't know yet. I mean, these mealworms and beetles and pupae, they change every so often, so I'll find something new that I may want to share with, you know, with YouTube later on. So that's it for now, and thanks for watching. Goodbye.